Hello everyone, good day to all of you. Hope you're all doing well. I'm finally back with some proper content here. Today I wanted to talk about the Beretta 1301. More of a discussion. I wouldn't necessarily call this, I'm probably not going to title the video a review, though I am going to be talking about and giving a review of this shotgun in here. I also wanted to give a bit of a build overview and just discuss some things about semi-auto shotguns in general. So this was my first foray into semi-auto shotguns to understand the perspective I'm coming at this from, and I mostly wanted to get this to try out semi-auto shotguns and compare them. For comparison, most of the experience I have with shotguns prior to this was with a Remington 870 pump action, and previously I hunted a fair amount with a just over-under double barrel. So the main things I was curious about when I picked this up were how much less is the recoil, because pump action 12 gauge, they'd have a bit of recoil, you know, any manual action type of shotgun, quite a bit there. So I wanted to see how much the semi-auto action would mitigate that, and also how much quicker this really is by comparison. And had this for just a little bit under half of a year now. I think I have enough time on it now to give a decent take on it. Use this all the way throughout the previous hunting season, of course. And actually that is primarily how I use this shotgun, even though with some of how I have it set up, and really I think the shotgun as a whole is more so marketed for like home defense. Again, I wanted to kind of experiment with it, so even though hunting isn't really its main use case, or at least, again, not how it's marketed, I think this works great as a hunting shotgun. If you're just here for kind of deciding if you want to get a Beretta 1301 for yourself, before I start talking about some other topics, I would say it's absolutely worth it. I would highly recommend this shotgun. All in all, I've had a few very minor problems with it that I will talk about, but the shotgun itself, as far as reliability, has been perfect. All the stuff that I've had complaints about are really relatively minor, and even with those complaints, the core functionality and everything was still perfectly fine on here. So with that, let's get started. I actually wanted to kind of shift gears and talk about a comparison with some of the other shotguns. Why did I pick up a Beretta 1301 in particular? Because there is a lot of semi-auto shotguns out there, a lot of just shotguns in general. You know, especially if I was just looking for a hunting shotgun, there's a lot cheaper options as well. So to start, for years now I've been thinking about getting a semi-auto shotgun, and the biggest one I was looking at even prior to the 1301 existing was the kind of tried and true Benelli M4, which I almost said Beretta M4, but at any rate, that was the biggest one I was comparing this one to for the longest time. And really the biggest things that stopped me from picking up one of those is I've heard that has a really long break-in period. Compared to this, and again, I don't actually own a Beretta M4 to Benelli M4 to confirm, but compared to this really does not have a break-in period whatsoever. Right out of the box, when I took this out, it was running flawlessly and continues to run flawlessly. And second, of course, if you have looked at the Benelli M4, very, very expensive shotgun. Probably one of the most expensive semi-auto shotguns out there. Compared to this, I'll get into it a bit later as well, but this is definitely not a cheap shotgun, not the most budget-friendly shotgun either, but not terrible. I was actually able to pick this up on a sale, which it does go on sale fairly frequently, to where you can get it for not too terrible of a price. But speaking of budget friendliness, one of the other ones I was comparing it to was the Beretta A300, which you might want to look at as well if you're in the market for one of these. Overall, the biggest difference between the 1301 right here and the A300, the A300 is a little bit of an older model. There's a lot of pretty minor quality improvements on the 1301 right here, but the really biggest difference between the two is that this has the so-called blink gas-operated system. So it's supposed to run a lot cleaner, it's supposed to cycle a lot quicker, which I think is a little bit of a moot point, which I'll get into more later. And the blink operating system in here, it's also supposed to be a lot more reliable. And again, I don't have a A300. I never did end up picking one up, of course, because I chose this one to compare it to, but like I was saying earlier, this has been 100% reliable for me. Now, I say that I haven't ran every single type of shell through this. Everything I've ran has been a 2 3/4 inch shell, just ranging from super light grouse hunting type of birdshot, which is mostly what I've been using, all the way up to like pheasant hunting type of heavier rounds, and buckshot, of course, double-aught buck, the type of stuff you'd use for home defense. Everything there has worked, like I said, 100% of the time. I didn't get to test this with minis. That was something I kind of wanted to check, but I've been having surprisingly a bit of difficulty finding any of those. And you can, if you really want, you can chamber up to a 3-inch shell in here, but not really something I have done. So going back a little bit to the blink system, to talk about that a little bit more, it is a gas-operated piston system. It does have 2 guide rods on each side, similar to like an 870, so it is quite smooth when it does recoil. It does actually still recoil though quite a bit, so I was expecting it to be a lot less, but for comparison, when I was shooting this side by side with the 870 that I have, it is definitely less on here, but negligibly so. They're very comparable actually. However, even despite that being the case, I was still able to get way faster splits with this compared to with the 870, just with the, it being a pump and everything. So for the times, for example, on this using just birdshot, I'm usually able to get about a 0.3, 0.0 or 0.35. And if I do use a heavier load, for example, like double-aught buck, I'm usually around a 0.5-ish for my splits. So not really, not terrible in any event. One thing I did notice though, like I mentioned, on the blink system here, they do advertise a lot the quick cycling time. I do wonder if that actually contributes to some of the felt recoil being rather stiff, because if you look at that footage when I am shooting it, really I'm having to recover from the muzzle rise long after, I mean relatively speaking long after the shotgun is already cycled. So even if it was cycling a little bit slower, I wonder if it wouldn't really negatively impact my split times at all, my recoil recovery, but it is what it is, and I don't really think it's that big of an issue either way. Like I said, 0.3-ish is perfectly acceptable for splits in my book for something like this. One other thing I do really quite like about this shotgun is, as far as going fast with it, is the safety placement. So this is a crossbolt safety. You can see right here, you push it in from the right side to put it onto fire. And then if you look on the left side, you can see a little bit of the red there. That just means it's on fire. So I really like this position for the safety. Coming from an 870, which is also a crossbolt safety, the big thing that slows me down with that one is that the safety is behind the trigger guard right here. And it's also a much smaller little button, so just a lot more movement going on there. My first shot times with the 1301 right here, by comparison to the 870, are always significantly faster. And furthermore, of course, you've already seen I do have a pistol grip on here. I'll get into my furniture choices a bit later, but even if you don't like it, I get that a lot of shotgun enthusiasts are not a fan of pistol grips because it does cause issues if you're using the push-pull method, which I am aware of. I don't know if I just didn't get a good explanation of it. I personally wasn't able to see any difference when I was trying the push-pull method versus just using a pistol grip and just finish gripping it like I do with a rifle. My splits were about the same. So either way, I haven't had any issues with the pistol grip, and why I'm bringing it up right now is you can use a pistol grip on here and it doesn't cause issues with actuating the safety. For instance, if I were to have, like on the Mossberg shotguns a lot of the time, they have a tang safety, which is nice for ambidextrous use, but of course, then if you use a pistol grip, it's way slower because you got to somehow get all the way up there. So even if you change from the traditional stock like I did, because this did come in a very traditional setup, then yeah, it won't cause you any issues as far as speed. And the main reason I did actually put on this pistol grip, just to get into that a little bit, it's because I'm really mostly used to AKs and ARs. So like I was kind of saying earlier about the push-pull method, all the people that really know what they're doing with shotguns seem to prefer that from what I've seen. Like I said, I'm more used to rifles with a pistol grip and actual pistols as well, handguns. So this just helps me to have pretty much the exact same muscle memory here. Even if it's not the most optimal, it still, I would say, gets 90% of the way there. And yeah, it's comfortable as far as relieving some of the tension on my wrist and everything like that, my elbow. Yeah, everything is pretty much the same as everything else that I shoot. I suppose speaking of the pistol grip, now would be a good time to move and kind of talk about the rest of the furniture choices on here, which I do think are relevant and decent to talk about, even though I usually hate when gun tubers try to pad their runtime with furniture. In this case, actually, starting with the handguard, I actually had a very good reason to replace this. So the OEM handguard that comes with this, I had a lot of issues with it. Namely, it broke, but even before it broke, I didn't like the texturing. It has very aggressive checkering on it, which I usually don't like having very aggressive texturing on my support hand, so up here on the fore end or the handguard. I actually don't mind as much if it's aggressive back here. So like I was saying earlier, the stock, it actually has some checkering on there too. It's the same aggressiveness on the stock as it is on the handguard fore end. But yeah, never really had an issue with it on the stock, just something with how the hands are placed and how you're holding the shotgun that makes it a bit more annoying up front. Very personal preference, you may not have an issue with it. To get back to the bigger problem though, like I was saying with the original handguard breaking, what happened to me, so to understand how this handguard is held in place, you have kind of a cup up here. The Beretta one that I have on here works a little bit differently, but still more or less retained by this cap, and it just kind of closes in over it. And then you also have two posts back here that go into the receiver. So on my original handguard, the two posts back here are just plastic and they cracked off. One of them cracked completely. The other one was, when I replaced the handguard, was pretty much just dangling on by a thread. And that all happened within the first 100 rounds, maybe even less than that, maybe the first like 60-ish rounds. So it did not last long whatsoever. I know not everyone has that issue, but I did look on just some forums and it seems to be relatively frequent. So you might want to end up switching the handguard yourself. The posts back here do seem a little bit fragile and do want to crack. If they do crack off completely, by the way, even then it's not like a complete deal breaker. It'll become very loose back here, but it is still held in from the front. But I've had much better luck with this Beretta handguard. This actually uses metal posts instead. It is actually just a modified Shukov handguard for an AK. You can kind of see if you look at it. But yeah, it works great on here. This is the textured version. Beretta does make two versions. They make just pretty much exactly like a Shukov, which just has the ribbing, but then their textured version has this laser grip texture right here, just kind of like diamond checkering almost. It is a good amount of texturing, I would say. Nowhere near as aggressive as the OEM handguard, while still offering a little bit of grip against your hand. So just the right amount, in my opinion. If you are looking at picking up one of these for yourself as like a home defense shotgun, you want to put a light on it. Of course, this handguard you can see does have M-LOK slots up here. Beretta does make a OEM version that has one M-LOK slot in the front. They also make one that didn't, which is the one I got that was just totally slick, just because that version was on an extremely good price at the time. But it's pretty easy to put a light up there, regardless of what direction you choose for your handguard choices. Another thing I changed, you can also see I have a heat shield on here. This is just one of the plastic ones from Slade Street Tactical, mostly because I like the look of it. It kind of gives it like a trench gun look, which I've always thought is just really cool. Not the greatest by any means as far as practical usage. One problem with this is it is only retained by this front little, there you go, you can see it right there, just this little band right here you can't actually use, even though it has two screws right here. You can't fit a rear band, and even if you could, I don't think it would work much better. This thing loves to slowly slide forward under recoil as you're shooting it. Even within one tube's worth, this thing will be probably an inch forward, unless you really slam it back, which I usually do. But yeah, not great there. Either way, I would recommend, if you're going to be doing a lot of shooting with one of these, the heat shield definitely does help a ton. It gets quite hot because the gas system is right here, pretty much right where your hand is, or at least where I like to put my hand. Yeah, there is quite a few other heat shield options out there that don't run into this issue. There are some ways to kind of jury rig this one as well to hold on tighter. I don't really like a lot of the solutions because they will bind the heat shield to the handguard, which I don't like for the ease of disassembly. But I'm looking into it. It's not the biggest issue to me either way, because even if this slides forward, my hand's still protected up here. And actually, let me switch gears a little bit. Speaking of disassembly, this is extremely easy to take apart for cleaning, even just a simple field strip. So how it works, you can see the little handguard retaining cap right here. I can't really show it because, especially lately, actually, YouTube's been very aggressive on banning anything that shows disassembly, but you would just unscrew this, then you can take either the handguard off and clean just under here if you just want to get at the gas system to just wipe that down, or you can actually take this off and just slide the whole barrel assembly out the front. You can also take the trigger out here. There's just a pin. The whole thing slides out pretty easy. Finishing up though with the furniture discussion, then I do want to talk about some of the littler kind of interesting details on here and controls. Did want to talk about the stock. So this whole pistol grip and the stock buffer tube adapter is all one piece from Mesa Tactical. I did want a buffer tube on here just because I do like that I can then collapse it, which just allows me to store it in a smaller bag when I'm out hunting and transporting it. This also puts it a little bit more in line. Now the OEM stock that comes with this, you can adjust the drop and the cast of it. Furthermore, if I'm wearing a really thick jacket when I'm out hunting in the winter, it's easy to just instantly drop the length of pull and then extend it back out for if I'm wearing lighter clothes like this. Moving to some of the other controls on here I wanted to talk about. So you got a bolt release right here, nice huge lever. If you're familiar with like the Benelli M4, of course, that's quite a bit smaller, just like a little circular button. This is very, very easy to do fast reloads with, pretty hard to fumble with how large it is. The charging handle, also nice and ribbed and easy to grab, quite large as well. I really like, even though I changed a lot of the bigger parts of furniture, as far as these controls and kind of the core shotgun, I have no issues with them. I actually really like how it's set up from the factory with all of this. You can change them out if you want to, but I've never really found a reason to. If you want to go really fast, for example, with a reload, you could put a match saver here, right? And then you can just put the round right in there and pretty much just slap the bolt release as you're going back forward. Another thing, actually, speaking of the reloads, let me just get this right here. And also, you don't want to, when you're loading this, you don't want to ride the charging handle forward. It does like to kind of stick right here, and then you just got to kind of just give it a little bit of a tap and it'll go all the way into battery. That's with or without a shell in the chamber. But when you are loading this, to get to what I was saying, you can see the loading gate actually stays out of your way the whole time. So you can just do this without any interference, unlike with something like the 870 again, which I came from. And then when you're done, you can just press this little button right there, and then you're good to go. And actually, one more thing, when I'm talking about loading, one thing I don't like, very minor, but you can see the follower right here. It's just a very regular kind of silver looking. I wish they would have added either some paint or like some texturing to it. Again, there are aftermarket options that do, but the reason for this is at a glance. For example, when I'm clearing this after hunting, if you just look in there, it's kind of easy to mistake that for the back of a shell. So you really have to look and make sure. Also kind of hard if it's in low light because it almost feels like the back of a shell there as well. I wanted to move to the barrel. I did kind of briefly mention this earlier. So this does have a bit of a shorter barrel as far as shotguns, especially for a hunting shotgun, just an 18.5 inch barrel. I haven't really ran into issues with it, and actually I do like the shorter barrel because what I do most of my hunting is usually for upland birds, so grouse and, going through, like literally crawling through brushes sometimes and really thick leaves and just everything. So having this is just a little bit more maneuverable and less that can snag on branches. This also does have a removable choke. However, do be careful if you are looking to buy a 1301. Some of the cheapest 1301s out there are actually the law enforcement model, and those have a fixed choke. If you get a normal 1301, really any of the other models out there of the 1301, these do have a changeable choke. It's very simple, regular, threaded in there. It does come with one installed, and you can identify the one that's in there if you look. So if you see those little notches right there, that just indicates the type of choke it is. They have a full user manual that indicates all the different notch system for which one it is. This is the one that came with it. I haven't really had any issues with just leaving the original one in. For reference, for me, when I was using just some home defense double-aught buckshot, I think I was using the Hornady stuff. I'll put the exact box up on the screen. Even at 25 yards, I was actually only getting about a 4-inch group, so or 4-inch spread. Also, this short of a barrel, just the whole package. This is quite a nice and light shotgun. Again, another reason I do like it a lot for hunting. With the original setup, it is just 6.7 pounds unloaded, of course. Again, going back to all the other shotguns I was comparing to at the start, like the Benelli M4, that's quite a bit heavier. So this is really pleasant to hike around in the mountains with. They do make two different versions of the tube capacity. This one is just 5 plus 1 in the chamber, of course. The more extended version pretty much just replaces this handguard cap right here, and it just goes out to the end of the muzzle instead. For me, for the type of hunting I do, I've never really had an issue with the capacity. And actually, this does come with a -3, -3 limiter in here. It's also very easy to remove. Pretty much there's a little plastic notch. You can just push that in with like a screwdriver and then the whole thing can come out the front. But very easy to take out. Not particularly quick though. So actually when I was hunting and practicing with this when I first got it at the range, since it was kind of around the same time when hunting season was starting, I just left it in the whole time, and again it was fine. One other difference though actually with this variant is you're kind of limited on your sling mounting options. You do have a sling stud just for those kind of like the older Uncle Mike's hunting style type of swivels, which you can see right there. And then the OEM stock does have a little stud in the bottom. I don't really like that. If you're using like an older style of hunting sling where you just sling it over your shoulder, then that works fine. But if you use a sling, like a modern sling like I'm doing right here, it's going to want to flip it upside down against your body. So that was one of my complaints. If you get the longer tube, the 7-round capacity, then it actually comes with a QD socket up front, which is also quite nice because then it's less likely to get bound up. This just likes to freewheel. It's just free rotating. So yeah, the sling would bind up a lot. And it was pretty annoying. I do also want to touch on the trigger on here. I was actually really impressed by this. Usually I don't care really either way, even if there's a bit of a sloppy trigger on a shotgun, because it's not like I'm doing particularly long range precision where it really matters. But this is a really, really nice trigger. So the Beretta 1301 Tactical has this flat faced trigger. The comp version, their competition version, has a curved trigger, which I think they're pretty much the same pull weight, but yeah, this is a great trigger. It has a very crisp break. It is single stage, but on average, I tested this on a trigger pull gauge, was usually getting about, I think, 3 pounds, 10 ounces. So even by rifle standards, it's actually a really, really nice trigger on here. And there is a little bit of over travel after it breaks, but like I said, for a shotgun trigger, this is excellent. One other thing I did want to talk about is the sights and the optic I have on here. I messed around with a few different optics, all of them aim points, but I do like this one. You'll see I have it actually mounted a little bit on the higher side. I usually like higher mounted optics anyway, but the reason I went with this specific height, so you will note on the tactical version, this is not something you have on the competition version, but you do have a Picatinny rail right here. It's already drilled and tapped in the receiver, which I love. If you use the Picatinny rail, however, pretty much any optic that you're going to mount on here will not co-witness with your iron sights, which you do have a ghost ring right here. You can see it just has 2 white dots on here and a white dot in the front for that front sight post. You can change out the front sight post if you want. Again, I'm totally happy with the OEM configuration, and you can adjust this, of course, for elevation and windage. That all happens at your rear sight right here. But anyway, going back to the optic, so yeah, even the lowest mount that I've found that I'm aware of, that'll still occlude the use of the iron sights as a whole. So I actually put a 1.5-inch mount on my aim point right here, and that actually allows me just perfectly to aim through these sights underneath the mount itself. And then, yeah, nice clear optic window then. I actually usually don't like co-witnessing anyway, just because I prefer a nice clear unobstructed window. And with this, both are still totally usable, as you can see. But if you do like co-witnessing, one option is there is saddle mounts out there, so you can remove this Picatinny and you could put a direct mount to the receiver for, again, like an aim point or a micro red dot of your choosing, and then it would co-witness properly. So overall, I really do like this shotgun. It's been a bit of a learning experience. Like I said, this was my first foray into the world of semi-auto shotguns and really kind of trying to deck one out like this before now. Like with that 870, I've really just kept it really plain Jane the whole time. So it's been cool. A lot to learn and a lot more to learn. I'm going to keep practicing with this as well. If you just want a hunting shotgun, you don't really need something like this. This is a little bit overkill. You might want to look at, for example, the A300, which is if you're just doing hunting, it's probably going to work fine, but yeah, there are quality differences for sure. While this is a bit more on the expensive side on the shotgun market, it's definitely nowhere near as expensive as the Benelli that I was bringing up earlier, but I do think it's an excellent choice. And if you wait for a sale, which does seem to happen with relative frequency, I was actually able to get this version, which was the 5-round tube and no M-lock so kind of a more restricted state type of version. I got this when they were doing a rebate, and actually ended up getting it for about the same price as I would have gotten an A300 anyway. So you can probably be patient and find one of these. If you're looking for a shotgun for home defense, I do think this would be a very good option. And with how I have mine set up, really, it wouldn't be that hard to push it into that role either. Personally, I'm still not really a fan of shotguns for home defense, as I mentioned in a previous video on home defense, but you know, it is a viable option. Thank you all for watching. Hope you found this interesting. Take care. See you all in the next one.